Some showers to northwestern areas, but plenty of sunshine to come at least until Friday with highs of 30 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, my name is Johnny Ratner. Major problems continue right on the Warwickshire-Staffordshire border for the M42. The northbound entry slip still blocked off the junction 10, the A5 Tamworth exit. A serious collision still being dealt with by emergency services. There are long queues heading south through Essex towards London down the M11, 7 to 6. From Harlow towards the M25, a car and a lorry collided earlier. It's still queuing back towards Stansted on camera. On the M4, London bound in Berkshire, the left lane shut 13 to 12 heading away from Newbury towards Reading, where a lorry's caught fire in West London at Maida Vale. That short stretch of Harrow Road shut eastbound between Chippenham Road and Amberley Road following an accident. In Devon, the A361 at Ilfracombe is blocked by collision, and London Overground suffering severe delays Stratford to Richmond, and Northern can't run Huddersfield to Penistone up in West Yorkshire. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. The devolution revolution. Angela Rayner wants more decisions to be made locally away from Westminster. Do you agree with that decision? Who should be making them then, and what should it look like? And speaking of devolution, Vaughan Gething has finally resigned. Right decision or not? Also, Labour have talked tough, haven't they, about clamping down on foreign workers, but now it seems that they're going to delay their plans to do so. Is this a right decision with some rationale behind it, or is it a sign that they're not going to be as tough on immigration as they promised? Also, I'll speak about immigration and process. Have you seen what's going on in Ireland? We'll take a look at that. Your thoughts on it all. Also, Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance, has joked that the UK will be the world's first Islamist nuclear country. I can tell you now, that has sparked outrage, but some say never a truer word spoken than in jest. Your thoughts? And last but not least, if you get elected as a Westminster MP, should you have to pledge allegiance to our King? All of that and lots more. Professor Matt Goodwin and Kerry Dingle keeping me company. But first, the 6 o'clock news headlines with a legend. There's Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that Jay Slater's mum says the confirmation of her son's death in Tenerife is the worst news she could have received. In a statement, Debbie Duncan said she can't believe what's happened to her beautiful boy, adding, "Our hearts are broken." The 19-year-old from Lancashire disappeared on the island a month ago after attending a music festival. A Spanish court says the body was identified by his fingerprints during a post-mortem and the injuries to his body are consistent with a fall, which then led to his death. Back in Lancashire, the Reverend Matt Smith, a vicar in Jay's hometown, offered his support to the family.
Our message would be that the community have always been here for you and supporting you and praying for you, and that's been very evident in the response that they've had. For this family, we're standing beside you as much as you need us to be. We're here for you.
Meanwhile, Vaughan Gething has told the Welsh Parliament today that serving as First Minister has been the honour of his life, as he announced he's stepping down after just 4 months on the job. Earlier, 4 members of his cabinet quit, saying they didn't think he could deliver a stable government. He's been under increasing pressure since losing a no-confidence vote last month over concerns about a donation to his leadership campaign. But he insists he's done nothing wrong.
I have worked hard, followed the rules and done really difficult and demanding jobs for my country. In 11 years as a minister, I have never, ever made a decision for personal gain. I have never, ever misused or abused my ministerial position. My integrity matters. I have not compromised it.
Vaughan Gething, and that wasn't the only resignation today. The England defender Harry Maguire says his boss Gareth Southgate produced memories that will last forever in his time as manager. Southgate has resigned as England manager following the squad's defeat to Spain in the Euro 2024 final on Sunday. Goalkeeper Jordan Pickford's also been active on social media today to thank his former boss for always believing in him. Southgate's predecessor, Sam Allardyce, says he's done everything he could in the job except win a trophy.
I'm not surprised. I think that I've said before that 8 years is a long, long time as an England manager. I think there's only Sir Alf Ramsey and Walter Winterbottom served longer as England manager than Gareth, and he's left with an outstanding success record. I mean, nobody can argue with that, apart from the fact that we didn't quite clinch the ultimate final that we possibly could have done, particularly in the Euros, but came very, very close twice.
Sam Allardyce speaking to GB News earlier. Now, the government's launched a major assessment of the UK's future military as the Prime Minister warns the world is more dangerous and more volatile. Sir Keir Starmer's promising to bolster what he described as Britain's hollowed-out armed forces, but he's not offered a timeline for raising defence spending to 2.5% of UK GDP. And that comes as the new Defence Review chief, Lord Robertson, said the UK faces urgent threats from the deadly quartet of China, Iran, Russia and North Korea, who he says are acting as one more frequently. The government's promising to deliver its findings by the middle of next year. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, says it'll lay the groundwork for Britain's new era in defence.
The world is changing fast. The threats are growing. In those circumstances, it's right we take a look at the threats, the capabilities we need, the state of our armed forces, as well as the money that's available to fund those. And that's the way that we balance, if you like, the requirements for stronger national security with the responsibilities for sound public finances.
Now, a woman has denied assaulting the Reform UK leader whilst he was campaigning in Essex ahead of the general election. 25-year-old Victoria Thomas Bowen is accused of throwing a milkshake at Mr Farage last month. The Reform UK leader, who's now the MP for Clacton, was covered in the drink after leaving a rally where he'd been addressing his supporters. Prosecutors said there was £30 worth of criminal damage to his jacket. The woman herself has been released on unconditional bail and will reappear for a trial in October. Now, just lastly, The King and Queen Camilla have been waving goodbye to the crowds in Guernsey on the second day of their trip to the Channel Islands. It's the first visit by the King since he ascended to the throne. Meanwhile, in an unusual twist, preparations got underway to bestow a royal title on an 8-year-old goat called Tamsin, set to be renamed the Royal Golden Guernsey Goat. Tamsin's going to make history as the first livestock animal to receive such a royal honour. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much for that, Polly. One of my viewers, Derek, on the website, he's got in touch and said, Michelle, why'd you call Polly Middlehurst a legend? She's a newsreader. Well, let me tell you, Derek, she's not any ordinary newsreader. Oh, no, she is a legend to me. She is an inspiration, and she is one kick-ass woman. That's the word that I will insert in there. You rock, Polly Middlehurst, and to me, you are a legend. So, Derek, there you go. Take that.
I'm just a newsreader.
She's blushing. Look, she's blushing. She'll go the same colour as a jacket in a minute. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. By the way, your profession doesn't mean whether or not you're a legend. You can be a legend irrespective of what you do during your working hours. Take that from me. Look, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, the Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin, is alongside me, and the director of the charity World Rights, Kerry Dingle, is alongside me too. Good evening to both of you. You can be legends as well. We'll be a studio of legends together this evening. Well, you guys will decide at home, quite frankly. You're not backwards in coming forwards about telling me what you think. You can get in touch all the usual ways. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email. You can go to the website, like Derek just did, gbnews.com/yoursaying. Get in touch with me there. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. The legend has left the studio, everyone. We'll see Polly Middlehurst tomorrow night. So I'm embarrassing her now. Look, Angela Rayner, I've got to say, you know, I think she's been speaking a lot of sense about devolution. I'm going to come on to that. She's been reaching out to a lot of council leaders, saying that she wants more decisions to be made locally. I think that's great. But before I come on to that bit, I want to address the obvious bit, because the Welsh First Minister today, he's finally decided to stand down. Look, take a listen.
I have worked hard, followed the rules, and done really difficult and demanding jobs for my country. In 11 years as a minister, I have never, ever made a decision for personal gain. I have never, ever misused or abused my ministerial position. My integrity matters. I have not compromised it.
Matt Goodwin, what do you think to this then?
Yeah, I mean, it's another interesting turn in British politics. I mean, I think, again, it's going to put the question mark over leadership in Wales under the spotlight. The ongoing problem here in trying to find somebody who can lead Wales with, what Wales expects. And I suspect we're going to have some kind of changeover and some kind of new culture in Welsh politics.
But why now, though? I mean, this fella lost a vote in terms of whether or not people had the confidence in him. He dismissed it, essentially, as a gimmick. I thought that was a little bit egotistical, and I thought it was wrong, and I thought it should have gone then.
Well, it also parallels a similar issue that we had in Scotland as well, where we've had two leaders now who have essentially lost the confidence of their political parties, of course, coming after Liz Truss and Boris Johnson as well. I think the broader issue is a crisis of leadership, actually, across British politics.
Are you in Wales? What do you think to all the goings-on there? Get in touch with me, as I just described how to a minute ago, and tell me your thoughts on it all. Kerry, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's up to the Welsh people, and the circumstances in Wales have been so bad in terms of housing crisis, unemployment, rising living costs, and here we have someone who's feathered his own nest, which was what seemed to have pushed that vote of no confidence.
What do you mean when you say it's feathered his own nest?
Well, he was accused of fraud, basically. So that, it does seem to be case closed.
What are we on about?
The First Minister in Wales, who was accused of corruption.
But are we on about this £200,000 donation? Because, I mean, there's a lot of allegations and suggestions flying around all over the place.
Well, there's the thing about the donation, but there's other stuff flying around. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it's not. About corruption. So, you know, it seems that if you lose a vote of confidence, you've got to step down, and he hasn't. And it strikes me an arrogance.
But that's not the rules, though, which I find really strange, because I find that the rules should be, if you go to that vote and you lose that vote, I feel like the rules should be, it's binding, so you're gone. I find it staggering that actually you can go to all that time, effort and investment in having these kind of votes and they're non-binding. What's the point?
Well, I think you're right. You're right on that, to be honest.
Do you think they should be binding? Those kind of votes?
Confidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you lose confidence of your party, if you lose the confidence of Parliament, of course, you can't operate as a political leader. You won't be able to get anything across the line.
But he thought he could. And he basically turned around and said it was basically like political opportunism, what's the word?
Opportunism.
Oh, thank you. It was his kind of opponents playing games. Today you've seen those 4 cabinet ministers resign. One of those people, of course, tried to be the leader when he got in instead. So is this just kind of politicking and game playing?
Well, there's always an element of that. But if you lose as a leader, if you lose the confidence of the Assembly, of the Parliament, you can't operate, you can't get anything through. And we saw that in Scotland, we saw it in Westminster, and now we see it in Wales. I mean, it's, as I say, it's an ongoing systemic issue. I think we need better leaders in British politics who inspire more confidence from their colleagues and voters.
Well, who do you want to be our next leader then if you're in Wales? Tell me your thoughts on that. But let's talk about the broader point then about Angela Rayner. So she's been getting in touch with council leaders, offering people the opportunity now to be bold, step forward and get in touch with them to kind of figure out ways of making decisions at a local level now. What do you think of this?
I mean, I never thought I'd be saying this, but I agree with Angela Rayner in the sense that after Brexit, the big promise in British politics, one of the big promises, was levelling up the left-behind regions. I mean, we have, people don't know this, but we have the highest rates of regional inequality in much of the Western world. So the difference between, for example, London and the North East or London and Wales. And this was ultimately what helped Boris Johnson get elected in 2019, this big promise to level up the regions. What the Conservatives did, though, is they basically said, we'll help you level up if you apply to the centre for money, for pots of money. We'll then give you that money and you can build a new town hall or a hospital or whatever, or a little statue in your centre. What Labour are saying, and I think they have a point actually, is that's not good enough. What you actually need to do is send power, not just money, but send power down to the regions, to communities, and allow them, for example, Andy Burnham in Manchester or mayors in the Midlands or wherever, to make the decisions that are best for local people. And I actually agree with that, because I think the centre of British politics over the last 14 years, over the last 50 years, the centre, the state, has shown itself incapable or unwilling to take people who live outside of London, to treat those people and communities with the respect and the recognition they deserve.
What do you think, Kerry?
Well, I don't think it's just outside London. I think it's very much in London too. And yes, we've seen a sort of real dereliction of democracy in Westminster and in terms of the state. But I think that devolution, or handing out more powers, which sounds good. It sounds, I'm for the most direct democracy possible. That's why the referendum on Brexit was so brilliant. Your vote mattered. But most of these powers, what's power
until people stepped in and tried to overturn it. But
exactly. But what are these powers without material resources anyway? What are they? What is she saying? It sounds to me like a wonderful butt-passing exercise.
I think that's...
rather than having to make decisions about what society needs, you know, whether it's in the north or in London, you are fetishising the process, which is a mayoral candidate or a local council. And in London, we've seen all these faux consultations with local people by Sadiq Khan, even asking a university to change the evidence for him to bring in LTNs, you know, low traffic neighbourhoods, which nobody wanted, and ULEZ. And so, you know, what is Rayner doing?
Just to push back on that, I'm not here to defend the Labour Party and Angela Rayner, but I think ultimately, as a principle, do you agree that power should be as close to the people as possible? Because it's the principle of popular sovereignty, which is ultimately what Brexit was about. We actually believe that the people are a source of legitimacy and authority in our system, and they deserve to have power over the decisions that affect their daily lives. Bureaucrats, technocrats, people at the centre think the opposite. They look down on the people, they think the people don't deserve power, they're suspicious of the people, and they would rather transfer that power to unelected bureaucratic organisations above the nation state, like the European Union, or to quangos, which don't have a direct line. So when we talk about sending power down, when we talk about devolution, when we talk about some of the things Gordon Brown has also talked about in terms of replacing the House of Lords with a chamber of citizens, or having wholesale constitutional reform that brings more power and legitimacy to ordinary people. I don't agree with a lot of things the Labour Party say, but in terms of bringing power closer to the masses, I'm fully on board with that.
I can tell you now, you guys are quite divided at home. So, Alexander, you've got in touch and you've said, we absolutely need this. We need way more devolution. The country, you say, has been way too London-centric for way too long. And I can tell you now that many more of you are saying the complete opposite. Craig says this is absolutely ridiculous. Councils are going bust now, left, right and centre. And that's without full autonomy over the funds. You're saying that many of these people that run the councils and the councillors within them are not fit to manage the purse strings. Lots of you saying, Matt says devolution is just going to be an additional layer of bureaucracy, more expense to the taxpayer. Councils are incompetent. Many councils should not be permitted to borrow any money at all. That whole notion in terms of the mismanagement of the councils coming through thick and fast. If some of those council leaders were here, they'd be pushing back and saying it's because they haven't had all of the kind of funds that they need, and that's why they've got themselves in the position that they are in. So you can be the judge. If they had more funds, do you reckon they'd be better managers or less better? Your thoughts on all of that after the break. We've been praising the Labour Party there, because I agree with you, actually. I do think that Angela Rayner is quite right on this one. But also, one of the things that they were promising to get tough with is foreign workers and clamping down on that. Well, it seems that those promises now are going to be kicked into the long grass. What do you make to that? See you in 2.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay, tweet me at GBNews, and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former Royal Butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise, because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying, I'm not going to accept the award, but he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, a Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin, and the Director of the charity Wellright, Kerry Dingle-Remain. One of my viewers, we've just been talking about devolution and whether or not it works. There's lots of feedback coming from people in Wales getting in touch with me about your 20-mile-an-hour situation. There's a lot of fury coming through the inbox about that one. I could tell you that for free. You're not very happy about that one. Look, there was a lot of talk in the election, wasn't there, about people's attitude and approaches to immigration. Nigel Farage, for example, said that this was going to be the immigration election. Well, I think actually Labour talked quite tough on this, and one of the things that they were saying is that they were essentially going to try and crack down on foreign workers, and it was going to be one of their priorities. Well, of course, we've got the King's Speech tomorrow, and it now doesn't seem that this plan of Labour's is going to be contained within it. It's going to be delayed. What do you think to this?
Well, none of Labour's plans on immigration are going to work. I mean, Labour talked a good talk during the election campaign. They said they were going to smash the gangs, they were going to stop the illegal migration crisis at the border. They talked about lowering legal net migration, but they're already backtracking on some of the policies that they suggested they were going to bring forward, like, for example, clamping down on firms hiring overseas workers if they don't pay the minimum wage. And wherever you look with the Labour Party and migration policy, it's set up to fail. I mean, take the illegal migration issue, the small boats. Labour said it's going to smash the gangs and set up a new border patrol command centre, which we basically already have, while it's going to remove the Rwanda plan and the deterrent, which would discourage other people from coming over, and it's going to overturn Rishi Sunak's Illegal Migration Act, which allowed us essentially to move quicker and faster and deport illegal migrants in the country. And Labour have said they're basically going to give an amnesty to 100,000 plus illegal migrants in the country. What we're seeing, Michelle, is the beginning of a much more liberal, laissez-faire approach to migration at exactly the same time as millions of people out there in the country become more concerned about the immigration crisis, become more sceptical about the effects of immigration on the country, and become more supportive of parties like Reform, led by people like Nigel Farage, who are basically saying, look, we need to get a grip on this because it's completely out of control. And it is out of control, because if you look at the ONS figures that came out yesterday, and I know you talked briefly about them on your show yesterday, I mean, the numbers are bananas. We are living through the biggest increase in our population since 1948, when troops came back from World War II and we had a baby boom shortly after World War II. The key difference, of course, is the population increase today isn't because of British people coming back. It isn't because of British families having more kids. It's because of mass immigration. That's why our population is growing at the quickest rate since 1948. So if we don't get our arms around this, I'm worried, Michelle, that we're going to have a much bigger problem.
What do you think, Kerry?
Well, I think Labour's always posed as the friend of migrants and friend of refugees, but I think it's always been talking the talk and using it to batter white working class people in Britain. So I don't have much sympathy for Labour. And I think their policy idea, which they've now ditched for the King's Speech tomorrow, was actually passing the buck anyway. So it's making employers have to deal with it rather than the government have to deal with it. And I also think that it's very convenient for a government that wants to sound good and friendly and so politically correct to not have to deal with upskilling workers in Britain, to not have to deal with the housing crisis, and to allow elite to go on poaching doctors and people from the poorest countries on earth, which I think is scandalous and doesn't help either refugees or the population in Britain. I'm very pro-immigration in terms of our ability to move freely around the world, but I don't think people should be dumped on, and I think it should be a matter of democratic decision-making, and Labour doesn't try and do any of those things.
Well, just briefly on that, I do think the key point is there is no democratic mandate for the policy of mass immigration. There isn't.
I know.
Successive governments on both the left and the right for the last 25, 30 years have said we will lower overall levels of migration into the country, and then they've done the opposite. They've treated voters with contempt, and then they sit around and say, gee, I wonder why Reform are getting 4 million votes, or I wonder why support for the two big parties just fell to its lowest level for 100 years. It's because what we're doing through mass immigration is we're basically giving the British people managed decline, is what's happening. More pressure on the NHS, more pressure on public services. We're fueling the housing crisis. Everybody likes to talk about planning reform. They don't talk about surging demand, which is coming through migration. And to be blunt, we are weakening the social cohesion of our country because a lot of the people who are coming in now are coming from outside of Europe, different values, different ways of life, different histories, different religions. No nation state has ever gone through the speed and scale of demographic change that we are going through currently and come out on the other side as a healthy, prosperous, socially cohesive society. Hasn't happened.
I'm almost loath to mention this because I think this fella's got a bit of a cheek, actually, talking about immigration. But Tony Blair, he has been speaking out and he's warned Keir Starmer, and I quote, to close off the avenues of the populist right by keeping tough controls on immigration. I say he's got a cheek because I think a lot of the immigration that we see, it happened under Tony Blair's watch anyway. But also, when you look at some of his ridiculous, disastrous war policies, that's one of the reasons that people are fleeing some of these countries. But anyway, this whole notion that you are somehow this kind of populist, right-leaning lunatic, if you have the audacity to want to have control of your country's borders, I find it quite frankly insulting.
Well, it's how people on the left try and control the national conversation, because what they do is they expand these words like far right, hate, populism, and they try and discredit what are entirely legitimate views held by a large majority of the country. I actually think Blair is right to say to the Labour Party, if you don't actually get serious about dealing with mass immigration and the illegal migration invasion on the borders, you're going to have a massive problem. He's right on that. And I do think politicians can change their minds, and I think Blair has clearly changed his mind on mass migration. He's also been very critical of the woke because he thinks that hurts the left. But
I don't agree at all. Blair has always used immigration either, as I was saying, to bash white working-class people as always one step away from racist, violent hysteria, which is actually what you're suggesting and what he's saying to Starmer. Get a grip on this, or look what these bigots will do. That's what he's saying.
No, I'm not suggesting
I know you're not suggesting that, but that's what I wouldn't stick up for Blair at all in relation to this. He's used immigration to police the white working class and make out that we have mass potential bigotry on the horizon, which is rubbish. I also think we should be careful, and I wouldn't trust Labour on this at all, is to not play the kind of neo-Malthusian numbers game and tell people that if we reduce the numbers, the economy will grow, because there's nothing inherent in that at all. And we should also be honest that people are not just consumers of resources, they're also creators. That's not to say there isn't a numbers problem in terms of migrants coming in because of the lack of integration, assimilation, our inability to stand up for British values, and our attempt to call British working-class people racist. So there is a problem, but it isn't a population numbers problem.
Of course it's a population problem.
Well, that's not causing the crisis that we're in or an unproductive British economy, is it?
Well, it's not either or. If we have the biggest population increase that we've had in 75 years, while trying to manage a housing crisis, while trying to fix the NHS, while trying to improve public services, while trying to ensure British kids can get places at British schools, of course the size of the population matters. What we are going through is the biggest increase in the population we've had really since the late 40s. Natural change in our population in terms of births being greater than deaths, last year added 400 people net to the population. Immigration added 600,000. So the size of the population matters. And if you look at where we're going if we don't change track, and I keep pointing this out, I write about this all the time, the next 12 years, we're going to have 6.5 million more people in this country, which is basically 70% of a city the size of London. 6.1 million of those because of migration. Migration is going to be 90% of our population growth over the next 12 years. Nobody in Westminster is talking about this. Nobody is saying, well, how is this going to impact the housing crisis? How's this going to impact the NHS? I was in A&E recently trying to figure, with my daughter, just looking around. I mean, none of our public services are working, but you're not allowed to say this is, mass immigration is a contributing factor to that, because that is considered to be somehow socially unacceptable. And if you look at countries around the world that used to be liberal on these issues, take Canada. Even Canada now, even Justin Trudeau has come out and said the population explosion is unsustainable because it's what's called the population trap. And that is a crucial point. When your population gets so big, the state can no longer provide basic services to its citizens. And that is why, when you look around Britain today, trains not working, NHS not working, can't get a GP's appointment, your kids can't get on the housing ladder, you don't feel safe, women are getting sexually harassed and leered at in London, there's violence on the streets, lots of people in our country don't share our values. That is what I'm talking about. We are entering a population trap where the state can no longer provide basic services because our population is too big, and it's also, I would argue, becoming too diverse. You need a shared set of values and a shared identity to make a society function. And I think, personally, we are losing that shared sense of unity.
Well, I mean, we talk about here, but look at what's been happening in Ireland. Have you seen the protests that's been happening there? If you've not caught up with that, look, I can play you a couple of clips now. There is mass unrest, actually. So many people unhappy. There was creating this migrant processing camp, basically, in Coolock, and the way that the Gardaí have responded to these protesters. I mean, they have been pepper sprayed, they have been whacked with batons, they've had the boots stuck in them. These people have been called thugs. The protesters have been called thugs, far right, you name it. The leaders there have been speaking out, saying that they won't tolerate this kind of civil unrest. But when you listen to what these protesters are saying, Matt, they're voicing so many of the things that you're raising. There's not the infrastructure here. Who are these people? You don't even know who these people are. You're dumping them in our local neighbourhoods. You've got to remember, when you look in Ireland, it wasn't that long ago, they had those two primary school children. One of them, I think it was a little girl aged about 5. I think she was slashed across the neck. You had the primary school teacher there trying to help her. She was attacked as well. You've had the teacher, she was murdered. You had those 2 gay men, they were murdered. So there's this whole backdrop of crime that's making people feel nervous and anxious, but yet they're constantly smeared as being far right. And that community is saying, you are not consulting us. They're just being dumped upon.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. And of course, this isn't the only case we've had. The mass industrial scale rape of young white working class girls across towns in England, where we saw sickening and still see sickening levels of sexual exploitation, primarily among Pakistani Muslim organised gangs, was another example whereby if you raised an objection, if you asked questions, you were denounced as a racist, you were denounced as a far-right agitator. Journalists wouldn't touch it, local councils wouldn't touch it, police avoided it until the evidence became overwhelming. Same story here. Illegal migrants entering the country. We don't know who they are. We don't know what values they hold. We know that some of them are pretty unsavoury. We had the Abdul Azidi case, the pouring of chemicals and acid over a mother and her 2 children. We've had sexual assaults and rapes in parts of southern England. People are nervous. They're asking questions. Why can't you control our borders? Look.
It's not
Michelle,
why can't you. It's why won't you.
Why
they won't do it.
Imagine a nation as a home, which is how I like to think of it. Our national community as a home. If you can't control who comes in and out of your home, what kind of home is it? It's the most basic, foundational thing the state should be doing, which is control who comes in and who goes out. And to see this nearly 10 years on from the vote for Brexit, where we were supposed to become a self-governing, independent, sovereign nation that could control our own destiny, I think that is what strikes many people as completely outrageous.
And just to be clear, by the way, on those protests, I don't condone people setting fire to things and attacking security guards and all the rest of it. But the point here is that these community people, they're not being listened to. When you look at the Minister for Justice, she's tweeting out all of these threads about how it's unacceptable and thuggish criminal behaviour and all the rest of it. But they just seem to either not recognise the need to consult people or seem to recognise it and, quite frankly, not care less about consulting people. I find it beggars belief, really, that you can't even put an extension in your house in some places without your neighbours having the right to veto it. But yet, when it comes to these kind of things, you can build camps, so it seems, or you can put unknown people into communities without any form of proper consultation at all. What do you make to it all? I'll tell you now who's been raising eyebrows and upsetting people. Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance. He has joked that the UK might have a problem with Islamism. What do you think to it? So you're into.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Wednesday is going to be a much sunnier day and a drier day for most of us. It's also going to be feeling considerably warmer. For this evening, though, we've still got low pressure in charge across eastern areas, so still some heavy rain to come through some parts of this evening, but behind it, a ridge of high pressure will bring clearer skies for western areas and then more widely through the night across to the east once those showers clear away into the North Sea. So a dry night to come for most of us. We could see the odd shower moving in across northern areas of Scotland, but clear skies mean that temperatures will fall away a little lower than they have done last night. So temperatures around 12 or 13 degrees first thing. But it's going to be a very bright start to the day. I think they'll be making the most of the July sunshine. The best of the sunshine through the day will likely be across the south coast of England, parts of South Wales as well. 15 or 16 degrees first thing. Fairly light winds as well. A bit more cloud across northern areas of Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland as well. We could see the odd shower moving in across the Highlands and the Northern Islands as well. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry and bright start to the day on Wednesday, which will really make a difference, I'm sure. And it should stay dry through much of the day. There is a risk of the odd shower developing across parts of England and Wales, possibly up towards Scotland as well. We'll also see thicker cloud moving in as this weather front approaches. It's not going to make too much progress, though, so it'll just bring cloudier skies to parts of Northern Ireland and parts of northwest Scotland. But elsewhere, with more in the way of sunshine, temperatures climbing in towards the mid-20s and for many of us into the low 20s. Now, Thursday looks like another mainly dry and fine day. Temperatures will climb higher as well on Thursday, but all the while across the north and west, it will remain that much cloudier with a risk of some showery rain for parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So the further south and east you are, the more longer-lived sunshine and heat you will see. Temperatures will climb towards 30 degrees for Friday.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems on the Warwickshire-Staffordshire border tonight for the northbound M42. The entry slip remains closed to junction 10. You can't get off the motorway onto the A5 towards Tamworth, where an accident's still being recovered. The Surrey stretch of the M25, meanwhile, is blocked clockwise 8 to 9, Reigate to Leatherhead at the scene of a crash, and further round on the western stretch, the two inside lanes are shut anti-clockwise 16 to 15. Just off the M4, a van has broken down. West London, Harrow Road shut eastbound through Maida Vale at the scene of a crash, leaving a number of buses having to divert. Down in Hampshire, the A35 at Lyndhurst is closed following a serious accident, and in Devon, the A361 at Ilfracombe blocked by a collision. On to public transport, and Northern can't run between Huddersfield and Penistone because of a landslip, and on London Overground, severe delays continue Stratford to Richmond. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7. Alongside me, I've got the Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin, and the Director of the charity World Right, Kerry Dingle. Kerry, I didn't get your reaction to those protests in Ireland. I was just showing there. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you make the right point, actually, Michelle. It's the lack of consent. And it does seem that the Irish government is sort of liking to bask in this glow of being pro-immigration and then not providing any of the structures or resources in order to provide for the unsurprising huge uptick in asylum seekers coming to, and apparently Dublin's like tent city. But I do think the key thing is they're going behind the backs of their own citizens. And I think we have to understand, obviously, the Irish government is enthralled to the EU and actually makes a whole, a great thing out of going behind the backs of its citizens, which is what the EU represents. So I don't think it should come as a big surprise, but it is a terrible and outrageous situation.
In terms of Labour and whether or not they are going to clamp down on that legal, just foreign workers, what do you think? Owen says, Michelle, it's simple. We cannot and will not reduce migration until employers start paying wages that entice British people to do the jobs that they don't want to do. The minimum wage, £11.44, currently in this country. What would you raise it to then? Give me your thoughts on that. Mary says, Michelle, can I just make a point, please? The vast amount of immigrants make fantastic contributions to this country. I'm all for control, she says, but please, can we not lose sight of that fact? I think that's interesting. I think she makes a good point there.
Absolutely, completely.
Many of you don't trust Labour on immigration, but did you trust the Tories? I mean, do you trust anyone, quite frankly? Because they all talk a good game, don't they? But whether or not they can deliver is anyone's business now. I'll tell you who has been talking and upsetting quite a lot of people. Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance. He's given a speech. Listen to what he had to say.
Boy, I have to beat up on the UK. Just one additional thing. I was talking with a friend recently, and we were talking about, one of the big dangers in the world, of course, is nuclear proliferation, though, of course, the Biden administration doesn't care about it. And I was talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over. But to my Tory friends, I have to say, you guys have got to get a handle on this.
Ouch. Well, he was clearly joking, but many people have really been pretty outraged by that statement. What did you make to it?
I don't think he was joking. I speak to a lot of people in Washington. I'm going there next week to give a talk. They're laughing at us. There are lots of Republicans and Conservatives who are looking at the decisions that we've taken in the UK, particularly decisions around mass immigration, our failure to take on segregation, sectarianism. JD Vance has been looking at what's been happening at some of our recent elections, and they're looking at the projections of where Europe is going over the next 50 years from reliable centres like the Pew Research Centre, and they show that in the UK, between now and the year 2050, the share of our population that is Muslim will more than double to about 20 to 25%. In countries like Sweden, it will go up to 30 to 35%. We won't be a majority Islamic country anytime soon, but we already have a serious problem with radical Islamism. We have not only about 40,000 suspected Islamic State sympathizers in the country, according to the security services, but as we saw at the general election, we have radical Islamists pressuring the Labour Party, intimidating Labour MPs, turning up at their homes, electing independent candidates. I've done surveys that have shown just how much of a problem this is. Other companies, Michelle, have found that 40% of British Muslims in this country would like to see a Muslim-only political party. These are serious issues, and JD Vance on the one hand is joking, but on the other hand, I know in Washington they look at us and they think we're a joke in terms of some of the decisions that we've taken, and they look at much of Europe, to be frank, and they say, what is going on here?
I've got to say, quite a lot of you guys at home actually don't think that he was joking. There's been a lot of kind of hoo-ha made of this in terms of, what does this mean then for this so-called special relationship if Trump and he get elected? Your thoughts on this, Kerry?
Well, I do hope you're wrong, Matt, and that he is lampooning Britain somewhat. But I don't think, and I think, your viewers are right, Michelle, because, Islamist extremism is a very serious problem, and it's the predominant terror threat in the UK. But I think we should be very careful not to tar all Muslims, the majority of whom are very moderate, with the same brush. My main concern, in fact, is that one of the hundreds of thousands of people who are a problem are young people in Britain and America who are actually supporting Hamas, are supporting an Islamist terrorist organisation. And I think that should really concern us, not just the failure of our political class to challenge Islamism, and because if you say anything, you're an Islamophobe, and we all know that's what's going on.
I mean, we saw this in the aftermath, most notoriously, in the aftermath of the murder of Sir David Ames, when he was murdered by an Islamic State
And everyone
supporter.
started talking about be kind on
and
social
instead we
media.
had a discussion about social media.
Well, don't forget, everyone, well, you won't forget, I'm sure, you've still got a teacher hiding in Batley. That was all allowed to take place. It's been allowed to continue. And, I mean, I don't know what people expect to happen if you don't clamp down on these kind of things. Of course, it will mushroom and continue to grow. Your thoughts on all of that? We'll return perhaps to this conversation in 2 minutes. But I also want to ask you, if you get elected as an MP into Westminster, should you have to swear allegiance to the King? Your thoughts?
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and the Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Cheng regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves, because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry till 7, Matt Goodwin and Kerry Dingle remain alongside me. Now, if you get elected as an MP into Westminster, should you have to swear an oath of allegiance to the King? Listen to this one.
I take this oath under protest and in the hope that one day my fellow citizens will democratically decide to live in a republic. Until that time, I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles according to law.
Ridiculous. What do you think, Kerry?
Well, I think good on him for having a go, and then he had to do it again because he missed out on further allegiance.
He lasted about 5 seconds till he rode back after
he rode back because he wanted to keep his position as MP. Well, you know, fair enough. But I think it is a completely anachronistic, medieval, you know, parliamentary oath from 1866, a time when John Stuart Mill introduced the first attempt to get votes for women through Parliament, opposed, by the way, by George V and Queen Victoria, who always opposed women having the vote and the mass of working-class people having vote. This is an entirely anti-democratic piece of nonsense that, along with the House of Lords, needs to go.
Don't be part of it, then. If you feel like that, and that's a valid perspective, why put yourself forward to be sitting as part of it?
Because if you're a Democrat, you need to argue and win over your constituents and people to back you to make those political changes. And I hope it's not just a one-off by him. I think as a Labourite... Is he a Labourite? I think it might just be a soundbite, unfortunately, because I do think swearing allegiance to a miserablest Green monarch is anathema.
You know, he had no back. If he felt as strongly as he made out, I thought it looked ridiculous.
He won't feel as strongly as me about this.
He wouldn't have
I don't think he's that big a
5
Democrat.
seconds later at the risk of a £500 fine and then potentially other stuff. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm all in favour of people expressing their views. We live in a free society, pro-free speech, free expression. I think the constitutional monarchy has a lot to offer the country. It provides us with a sense of continuity. It provides us with a sense of unity. It helps hold our nation together. It provides advice to rulers that continues beyond individual governments and ministers. I mean, it's a lot of advantages to bring to the table. I think Clive Lewis can say what he wants. To me, his general demeanour struck me as a little bit sort of...
But then on the other hand,
signalling, a bit narcissistic.
But then on the other hand, though, you will say it's important that people kind of rally around a set of British values and that we're all on the same page and so on and so forth. So surely respect for the monarchy should be one of those key
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I think it's an integral part of who we are, and I think we need to teach children in our schools who we are.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Michelle, you say, look at the going behind people's backs. You know, all these anti-democratic measures, like swearing allegiance to the monarchy instead of to the people, is about overriding and going behind people's backs. It's about saying you're less important than the king. So I don't think you can have your cake and eat it.
It's a symbol of the people. The monarchy is a symbol of the national community.
How is it a symbol of the people when
it's a symbol of who we are?
You swear allegiance to an unelected, you know, really rich man who can lord it over you and who has got his own miserablest green agenda, rather than swearing allegiance to serve your constituents and the people. Why would you want to do that in 2024? It's medieval.
Well, by the way, you do say you was elected to Parliament to represent your constituents and the country to the best of your ability, but then you have to add on the pledging allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and his successors according to law.
Or you get thrown out of Parliament. That's why Sinn Féin aren't... I don't agree with Sinn Féin, but that's why they're not in Parliament, because they won't swear the oath.
Glenn says, on your say, if you don't pledge to the King, then you shouldn't be able to get into Parliament. He says, simple. I like it. Sometimes the most simple solutions are the best ones, Glenn. I like you and I like your thinking.
Disagree, Glenn.
Many people disagree with you and think that you should absolutely be doing that if you want your place in Parliament. Look, that's all I've got time for. The big man, Nigel Farage, is up next. Thanks to my panel. Thanks to you. Don't go anywhere, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Wednesday is going to be a much sunnier day and a drier day for most of us. It's also going to be feeling considerably warmer. For this evening, though, we've still got low pressure in charge across eastern areas, so still some heavy rain to come through some parts of this evening, but behind it, a ridge of high pressure will bring clearer skies for western areas and then more widely through the night across to the east once those showers clear away into the North Sea. So a dry night to come for most of us. We could see the odd shower moving in across northern areas of Scotland, but clear skies mean that temperatures will fall away a little lower than they have done last night. So temperatures around 12 or 13 degrees degrees first thing. But it's going to be a very bright start to the day. I think they'll be making the most of the July sunshine. The best of the sunshine through the day will likely be across the south coast of England, parts of South Wales as well. 15 or 16 degrees first thing. Fairly light winds as well. A bit more cloud across northern areas of Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland as well. We could see the odd shower moving in across the Highlands and the Northern Islands as well. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry and bright start to the day on Wednesday, which will really make a difference, I'm sure. And it should stay dry through much of the day. There is a risk of the odd shower developing across parts of England and Wales, possibly up towards Scotland as well. We'll also see thicker cloud moving in as this weather front approaches. It's not going to make too much progress